To questions to the Minister for Communities, Nicole Cathy Mason.
Gormaga Cancorlia, question number 1, Lady Hull.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I wish to group questions 1 and 4 and would like to request an additional minute for the answer. Regretfully, neither my department nor Sport NI have any funding opportunities currently open which grassroots sports clubs could apply to. However, I can announce that Sport NI will reopen its popular crowdfunding programme in March. I recognise the important role that grassroots sports play across our communities, including junior football. The physical health and well-being that sport and physical activity provides cannot be underestimated. Promoting the active living strategy, opening up participation opportunities in sport and physical activity, and developing and improving sporting facilities are key areas for my department. Grassroots sports are the first step in this lifelong journey to more people being more active more often. In 24-25, my department secured £500,000 for the Your School, Your Club initiative to enable the opening of school sports facilities for community use outside of normal school hours, and I hope that this funding opportunity will continue in future years. Despite the challenging budget position, I will continue to make the case for funding to support clubs across all disciplines of grassroots sport, including junior football. I encourage my officials to meet with any grassroots sports clubs to understand sector need, either in terms of funding opportunities or for additional facilities to meet demand.
Mrs Mason.
And thank the Minister for that answer. Is the Minister aware of the current project that's taking place in Ballykilner? Camp Down GAA County Board are undertaking a project there. It's a centre of excellence and a sporting and community facility. What support can the Minister give to that, and will he engage with those that are involved in that project?
More than happy to engage with that project. My understanding is that funding has been secured for that project through the Peace Plus funding that had been made available, but certainly I'm more than happy to engage, and if there are any specific issues that they are facing, I would be happy to discuss that with them.
Peter Martin.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your answers so far. My interest is particularly at junior level and junior football, and there have been increasing numbers of players at primary school, certainly in North Down. And I was wondering, would the Minister be willing to come down to North Down to see the level of enthusiasm that there is at that level, perhaps kick a ball around as well, and hear some of the coaches talk about the developments that we're having in North Down? Thank you.
Mr Speaker, I'm always happy to visit at North Down and to join the member wherever it is he is wanting to show me around. In many ways it's a good problem that you're experiencing, that there is additional need. However, we know that exists right across Northern Ireland, so I'd be keen to better understand the issues and see what my department can do to help in this situation.
Thank you, Minister, for the answer so far. Minister, where a school and a sports club share facilities and those facilities require upgrade, do you routinely direct them to the EA's minor works funds for funding?
Look, there are a number of ways in which we can help when it comes to improving sporting facilities at schools. Often that is the case, that the Education Authority has a role to play. As I've previously outlined, we have the Your School, Your Club programme, which helps make sure that we're making the best use of the facilities that we have as well, and that so much of our sporting estate is found within the school estate. And I'm very keen to make sure that we can open that up where possible to make sure as many people have access to facilities that are used and funded through public funds.
Does the Minister have any opportunities at all in the future for those hardship funds which would previously run through the department up to about £500,000, but for small grassroots groups? Because the difference between those organisations folding can often be a couple of £100. It's not a big amount of money, but it gives them the lifeline to be able to survive and then grow into the future.
Mr. Speaker, I'm always happy to work with those clubs that are in need, that are looking for some support, either for me to be able to direct them to funding or to make use of the funding streams that may come available within the department. I'm a big advocate for sport, all sports. I want to make sure that we have the opportunity for as many people as possible to play and to take part, because I believe that that has benefits that go way beyond just my own department, but we can think of the health and educational outcomes that can come from that as well. So certainly I will always be someone that will be looking for additional investment in that way. He will understand the limited budgets that we operate currently, but I think that it is an investment, therefore a good use of money, and I will always be an advocate for that.
Alan Robinson.
Question number 2, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my officials are working at pace to put in place the IT and other logistical arrangements necessary for making the one-off £100 pension age fuel support payment, and that payment remains on schedule to be paid before the end of March 2025.
Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response. What longer-term support is there, Minister, going forward for those in the greatest need to get what they need?
Minister.
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the whole House will be behind me on this, we want to see the UK Government change course. It has made a mistake. It has decided to take £1.4 billion off those in our society that need help to heat their homes. That overall is a small amount that I believe the government should have kept in place. It is small in this way, in regards to the additional costs that will be coming to the government because of this decision, additional costs to the health service, additional people who have applied for pension credit, which is also a passport to other benefits as well. This is actually nonsensical. It's not going to end up saving the government money, so I hope that they will actually change course. However, I recognise that that way may not be the place. That's why we are taking the action that we can to help those who are in need. And that's what we're doing through the fuel poverty strategy. That is currently out to consultation. It will be out to consultation until the 6th of March, and I hope people will respond to that consultation. But I hope through that we will have a strategy in place that provides support to give immediate relief to those in need, but that we also put in place a longer-term strategy to make sure we're putting in place those measures that can help, that we invest in energy efficiency, for example, to make sure that less money is spent by people in Northern Ireland having to heat their homes.
And Minister, the scheme, the £100 scheme, is very welcome. However, will those who receive the scheme who live in residential settings, maybe multiple people, be expected to pay any additional charge to the residential setting they're living in?
Minister.
No, that is not my understanding. Any additional charge will have to be paid, and of course there is, importantly, no application process either.
Claire Sugden.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, have you explored the opportunity of creating a Northern Ireland version of the Warm Homes discount scheme?
Sure.
Mr. Speaker, all of these issues can be brought into consideration through the development of the fuel poverty strategy.
And thank you, Minister, for your answer so far. I'm just wondering what engagement either you or your department have had with the counterparts in DWP to ensure that our unique circumstances here are taken into account with the pending UK Government's Green Paper on welfare reform?
Sure.
I have met with Liz Kendall and others within the ministerial team at DWP, and my officials have continued engagement at that level to make sure that our particular circumstances are taken into consideration. I have to say, though, there are similarities with what the UK Government are trying to do and what we are trying to do here as well. It is in everybody's benefit that more people get into work, that we break down those barriers that exist, that prevent those that aren't currently in work getting into work. So we do have common cause. I want to make sure that we're working closely together to get the maximum benefit. Ultimately, our aim should be to protect those that need help and ensure that we give the assistance necessary to get those who are currently not in work into work.
McLaughlin.
Please.
Sure.
Mr. Speaker, this will be part of the ongoing fundamental review of allocations. My officials will work with the Housing Executive as it carries out modelling, stakeholder engagement and appropriate consultation to inform its considerations. It's anticipated that the fundamental review, including the consideration of primary social need points, which is a new addition to the review, will be completed by autumn 2026, if not sooner.
Ms McLaughlin.
It's clear that the current system is not fit for purpose, and this review is urgent and very necessary. Is the current timetable sufficient to address these challenges quick enough?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want it to be done right now, but I also want it to be done right. And there is a balance there to be struck, but I have full confidence in officials in this role and in the Housing Executive to make sure that we have in place a system that, as the member describes, is fit for purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answers so far. As an MLA who receives reports of people who've been intimidated, antisocial behaviour and sadly domestic violence within homes, it's important that we're able to support these people. But can the Minister outline how common intimidation is versus domestic violence?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the 10-year period from 2014 to 2024, cases due to intimidation fell from 380 in that year to 226 last year. Domestic abuse cases rose from 721 in 2014 to 1,146 in 2024. Mr. Speaker, that is a damning indictment on our society, that in that sector alone, in social housing, the total number of reported cases were 1,146. It's very clear that there's wider work for this executive and society as a whole to do to tackle this issue.
Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister. Minister, can you confirm with the review of primary social needs, now we know it will be out about October 2016, will that review include co-production with victims, or will the consultation be purely based on what the current framework is and add something to it?
Minister.
Well, just for clarity, it'll be 2026, not 2016. I can do many things, but I can't travel back in time. But what I want to do is to make sure it's as comprehensive as possible and that we consult as many people as possible. As I said in my previous answer to Sinead McLaughlin, I want to make sure that we do this right, and that means that we have to make sure that we speak to as many people as possible and make sure that we have all of the information at our disposal.
Doug Beattie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Number 5, please, Minister.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my department has issued guidance notes to all eligible applicants to the performance programme of the Northern Ireland Football Fund. The guidance notes are also available on the department's website. Applicants will need to satisfy the department that investment in artificial grass pitches with rubber infill will offer value for money.
Mr. Beattie.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. And I guess you will. I mean, it's not just your department, and I understand that, and you'll join me that we shouldn't be following EU regulations in regards to this, but we should be getting rid of microplastics. And with 8 out of 12 top-flight tapes going plastic, this is becoming a real issue. So could I ask the Minister, looking at this in the long term, we have to look in the long term, will he, working with other departments, set up a fund to be able to support these clubs and other institutions once this comes in?
Minister.
Well, of course, this is something that we might have wanted to consider, that we could have debated in this place, that we could have decided whether or not it was the right move to make, whether the perceived benefits from it would have outweighed the additional cost. But we didn't have the opportunity to do that in this House. We didn't have the opportunity to decide whether or not this is something that would actually work for us. I cannot commit to additional funding at this time, but of course we will be keeping that and all of these issues under review.
Jonathan Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in keeping with the Minister's comments, is this not yet another example whereby blind allegiance to EU regulation from some in this Assembly, where there is zero scrutiny, zero representation, actually leaves local people at a disadvantage?
Minister.
Well, of course it does. All the evidence that we have is that this will drive up costs because we currently have a system in place whereby we can ensure that we have what's needed within the pitches. That is being taken away from us. The alternatives are more expensive. And I think that it may have been a route that we would have want to have gone down. We may have decided that this would have been right, that the environmental benefits outweigh the additional costs. But that should have been a decision that we made in this House. This should have been a decision that we had the opportunity to debate, to scrutinise, to make sure that it was actually right for us. And that has been taken away from us. And I think it's right that we highlight the fact that there are additional costs for people right across Northern Ireland and various sports in Northern Ireland because of the implications that this will have.
Donnelly.
And thank the Minister for his answer so far. What assurances can the Minister give to clubs with existing 3G pitches about support and advice when their surfaces reach the end of their lifespan and require replacement post 2031?
Minister.
Well, we can certainly give advice, and I'm aware that there are a number of trials being conducted on additional or organic materials that may be able to be used, but I hope the member would agree with me that it would have been better if we would be able to have those discussions in this House and work out whether that instead of needing guidance in the first place, that we could have had the debate as to whether we kept what we currently have. And I think that this is going to add additional cost, and as someone that believes we need additional pitch provision right across Northern Ireland, I'm concerned that this is going to add cost to our ability to deal with that issue, and I hope that that is something that members in this House will take on board.
Mark Durkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for his answers and welcome the impending and long overdue opening of the Northern Ireland Football Fund. In the terms and conditions, Minister, it refers to the fact that match funding of 5% will be expected from successful clubs. However, in the case of there being a publicly owned ground, that will increase to 40%. Given recent investment of somewhere in the region of £2 million by Derry City Football Club in the Brandywell, in the North Stand, there's still construction ongoing. Will the Minister give favourable consideration to including that as an example of match funding from a club?
I hope the member will read all of the documentation that has been put out, and certainly for those who have invested in the past, that does contribute towards higher points within the matrix, and that isn't just through this process but includes past investment as well, because I think it is important that those that have invested in their facilities, that those who have been willing to put money in already will benefit from that. But I encourage the member to read all of the documentation, because I think when you look at the scoring matrix that we have put in place, it is very, very fair, and I think that's been the response from most clubs so far.
Brian Kingston.
Question number 6.
Mr. Speaker, my department's plans for the Clifton Gateway Public Realm Scheme have been significantly impacted by the work being undertaken by the Department for Infrastructure to develop the Eastern Transport Plan 2035 and proposals for the next phase of the Belfast Rapid Transit Programme. Donegal Street, Clifton Street, and Carlisle Circus, which represent major sections of our proposed Clifton Gateway Public Realm Scheme, are vital parts of the infrastructure network and are integral to proposals within the Eastern Transport Plan 2035 and form part of the proposed route of the Belfast Rapid Transit 2. For these reasons, my department is unable to further develop its plans for Clifton Gateway Public Realm Scheme, and progress will not be possible until there is more clarity around the Department for Infrastructure's proposals for this area within the Eastern Transport Plan 2035 and its delivery programme for Belfast Rapid Transit 2.
Mr. Kingston.
I thank the Minister for that answer, and indeed it reiterates what we had heard previously, that the uncertainty over the rapid transit scheme was holding up the progress of Clifton Street Public Realm Scheme. Can the Minister update on 2 nearby schemes, one for the Lower Old Park Road Public Realm Scheme and the Lower Shankill Peters Hill Gateway? Is there any progress we can report it there?
Minister. In relation to Peters Hill, which is Shankill Gateway Phase 1, work is ongoing to procure the works contractor. It's anticipated that the contract will be awarded in April of this year, and site works are expected to commence in spring, early summer, and take 12 months to be completed, and that is investment in the Shankill of £3.6 million. In regards to the Old Park scheme, the Lower Old Park Road Public Realm Scheme area commences just beyond the junction with the Crumlin Road and proceeds along the Old Park Road, finishing at Deanby Gardens. Since these plans were developed, the Department for Infrastructure has identified Lower Old Park Road as a route within the Belfast Cycling Network delivery plan. Officials from both departments are working together to explore any opportunities for collaboration to deliver improved pedestrian and cycling infrastructure within the public realm project in a way that avoids nugatory works, minimises the impact on the local community, maximises the benefits gained from public investment in the area, and achieves value for money. This has had a significant impact on the planned DFC Lower Old Park Road Public Realm Scheme design, for example, in planning permission, budget and programme.
John Blair.
Mr. Speaker, the Clifton Gateway area is key in delivery of the Belfast Rapid Transport 2 scheme, hopefully serving North Belfast, of course, but also some areas of my own South Antrim constituency. Can the Minister give any further information on any snag issues that might have arisen around the Clifton Gateway scheme that could be impacting on the delivery of that transport scheme?
Prior to the Clifton Gateway Public Realm Scheme being paused, design proposals had been developed, including engagement with key stakeholders. So I suppose the snag is that these design programmes will need to be reviewed and updated to take account of the Eastern Transport Plan and Belfast Rapid Transit outcomes when this scheme is progressed in the future.
Matthew Till.
Minister, just down the hill from the Clifton Gateway is what is called the Tribeca Quarter. It's falling into dereliction. It's shameful. In a written answer to me last year, spring last year, you said your officials were meeting with Belfast City Council to discuss the vesting of that site. That was in July. What's happened since then, and what is your department doing?
Bit off topic, Minister, but it's up to you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as you've pointed out, that is not related to the question at all, but I think it's a very good attempt from the member to try and connect it. So perhaps I could write to the member with that detail, but dereliction is an issue. It's one that needs to be addressed, and I look forward to seeing the dilapidation bill coming forward from the Department for Agriculture.
Declan McAleer.
I'll get a case to shock to question 7 of the Hall.
Mr. Speaker, the Department for Communities Regeneration policy focus is on urban settlements with a population of 5,000 or more. As rural villages and small towns have populations of under 5,000, they sit outside DFC's urban regeneration policy remit. These smaller settlements fall within the remit of the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs. However, my department has led on the delivery of the COVID Recovery Small Settlement Scheme, which was jointly funded by the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs and the Department for Infrastructure. In total, almost £29 million worth of projects are being delivered to smaller settlements across Northern Ireland. And my officials are also currently working with officials from DAERA and DFI, as well as local councils, to develop a long-term, community-led approach to regenerating our cities and towns, which would also include rural villages and smaller towns. And I intend to make a joint announcement on this programme later in the year.
Mr. McAleer.
His response. Obviously, the Minister may not want to reveal details of his proposals, but would it likely encompass a successor to the small settlement scheme?
Well, the member's right. I don't want to be giving too much away on that. However, I hope that he recognises my commitment to making sure that we are leading when it comes to regeneration of cities, towns and villages of all sizes. Obviously, there are different responsibilities that fall in within the remits of different departments. But I'm pleased with what we were able to do under the COVID recovery small settlement schemes, and will continue to make sure that we are delivering, and we have already delivered in the West Tyrone constituency in this regard. We're providing funding of over £6 million towards the planned public realm scheme in Strabane, and there's significant city deal investment of £102 million planned for Strabane to include the Canal Basin and neighbouring sites, and that will make a real difference in the member's constituency.
Well, Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the
Minister will agree with me that the best small town in the North Belfast constituency is that of Glengormley. Just before Christmas, the Minister kindly listened to representations to award £2.5 million to Glengormley Town Centre for a public realm scheme. Does the Minister still stand over that important commitment of regeneration of that part of North Belfast?
Minister.
Yes, of course, absolutely. I know that's an area that is very dear to the member's heart, and I thank him for the continual, constant lobbying that the member has been involved in up until this point, but certainly the commitment from the department stands.
Patsy McDonald.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister. Minister, in 2023, your department funded a £110,000 scheme to explore regeneration projects in 10 rural villages. Can you give us an update on those specific locations, please, Minister?
I don't have that detail with me right now, but of course I'd be happy to write to the member outlining what it is that we have done in regards to
And thank you to the answers so far. Also communicated with you on this subject as well. The Village Catalyst programme was welcome. It concentrated on historic buildings. I'm just wondering, can the Minister confirm are there any plans in the rest of the mandate to support bringing empty buildings back into use in rural villages and towns?
Absolutely, this is important part of what we're trying to do through the housing supply strategy. We need to make sure we're doing everything that we can to make use of the buildings that we have that are already in place. Sometimes that involves extra cost. However, it is still beneficial for us to make sure that we are using the buildings that we already have. And so I've engaged with HED in relation to this and other interested stakeholders who have had experience of converting and reusing existing buildings. And I hope that we will see more of that to tackle not only the issues that we have in Northern Ireland in regards to housing, but also other ways in which we can reuse existing buildings for the benefit of our economy and our people more widely.
Diane Forsyth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 8, please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I wish to group questions 8 and 11. I understand and acknowledge the sector's concerns about the impacts of recent UK Government budget decisions, including the increase to employers' national insurance contributions. My department currently has 2 contracts with the voluntary and community sector organisations. Both contracts provide demand-led services, therefore contractual targets are not suitable for these contract types. My department also provides grant funding to a number of voluntary and community organisations. These funding relationships do not involve contractual targets. Instead, organisations are funded to deliver agreed objectives in line with an outcomes-based accountability approach. My department adopts a flexible approach to grant making. Where delivery partners working with my department are facing significant unexpected cost pressures, my officials are willing to consider all reasonable requests for changes to agreed objectives. Organisations grant funded by my department can retain the full amount of any employer's allowance received, which offsets some of the employer's national insurance contributions burden for small organisations. The substantial increase to employers' allowance included in the Chancellor's recent budget announcement is expected to offset some of the increase, and my department encourages all eligible organisations to claim this allowance. In recognition of the impact of the announcement, alongside the Minister of Finance and Minister for the Economy, I have met with the NICFA Chief Executive and voluntary and community sector representatives to discuss this issue and the wider financial challenges faced by the sector. The Finance Minister subsequently wrote to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury outlining the pressures that will be faced as a result of this policy decision. The correspondence requested that HMT consider providing support to those outside the central government sector who provide vital public services and who receive funding from central government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer and his ongoing engagement with the voluntary and community sector, in particular coming to the all-party group meeting recently to hear directly the voice from the sector. And I just want to ask the Minister, is the Department currently providing any additional support to the sector given the challenging current environment?
We're committed to the principle of full cost recovery in brokering funding arrangements with sector providers, and where delivery partners are facing significant unexpected cost pressures, we will consider all reasonable requests. But I have demonstrated my commitment to the sector by providing a 5% uplift to key DFC funding programmes in this year's budget. And this additional funding was provided as a contribution towards the pressures organisations face due to rising costs.
Mrs Dodds.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you, Minister. I know that you will agree with me that the voluntary and community sector directly help those who are most in need at their point of need. We listened with interest to the Secretary of State's speech last week. Do you think he has any idea of the impact that his government's budget decisions will have on the voluntary and community sector here in Northern Ireland, and particularly on the most vulnerable people in Northern Ireland?
Mr Speaker, I don't think this government have any idea about the implications that its decisions are having for people right across Northern Ireland, whether it's farmers, whether it's pensioners, or whether it's the voluntary and community sector that are doing key work in making sure we tackle some of the most pressing issues in society. All they are doing is making it much more difficult, and that includes the voluntary and community sector, which is why I will continue to make the case against it.
Moving to topicals, Daniel McCrossan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for the answers to the questions so far. Minister, Men's Shed are with us in the Assembly today, and as you'll know, they play a huge role in tackling isolation, especially for men in rural communities, and improving their mental health and well-being. But unlike in the South, where the government funds them for this important work, they receive no central support or funding here. Minister, will you meet with the Irish Men's Shed Association to discuss providing them with some modest funding?
Minister.
The member will be aware of the very tight budgetary conditions that we find ourselves in, and the significant cost savings that I have had to make in the last 12 months in order to deliver a balanced budget. However, I'm always willing to meet with those in our society who are making requests of government, and especially so if they are lining up with the objectives that we are trying to achieve as an executive.
Mr McCrossan.
Minister, for the answer, and Minister, I also welcome that you will meet with Men's Shed should they seek that meeting. In fact, it would be great if you could see them today if they're in the building, just briefly. It'll take a small amount, as I'm sure you'll understand, with the budget constraints even in consideration, to fund this important organisation and the work that they do. Can you and the Health Minister maybe work together to see if we can find some form of funding, no matter how modest, to at least assist them in the important work which will have considerable benefits for the health and well-being of those involved?
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I'm happy to look at any proposal that comes from the organisation that he mentions, and if appropriate, I'm more than happy to write to the Health Minister to see what can be done jointly if the objectives which they are outlining align with the programme for government.
Thank you, Speaker. This past week has seen a huge victory for common sense in the United States, with President Trump signing an executive order protecting women from biological males competing in their sports. Women have had their dignity taken, records stolen, and safety compromised in the advancement of these cultural woke ideologies. So can I ask the Minister, what assurances will he give women's sport in Northern Ireland that they will be protected in a way that ensures fairness, safety and integrity?
Well, Mr Speaker, let me make this very clear in terms of my own position. I don't believe that there's any room for men in women's sport. I think for two reasons. First of all, fairness, and secondly, in terms of safety. Sport is inherently physical. The physiology of the sexes matter, and I think that everyone should be getting behind the notion that women's sports are reserved for women. I think most people will agree with that, and in fact it's very regressive to think anything else.
Mr Buckley.
Thank the Minister for his answer. Minister, these same woke ideologies are being advanced and made available through libraries NI to underage children. What will the Minister do going forward to ensure that children are safeguarded and protected from inappropriate and dangerous content?
Sir.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've made my position on this very clear. I believe that libraries and I should be a safe place. I think that parents should and must have confidence in the books that are available, and we need to be making sure that we do everything that we can to protect children. I have made my views clear to the Board of Libraries NI, to the Chairman and to the Chief Executive, and I hope that people that would agree with where the member and I are coming from would also make sure that their views are made known, because I do not believe that the vast majority of parents would agree with some of the literature and books that have been made available in our libraries, and it is right that we stand up and speak out against it.
Trevor Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Minister, can I ask you, in terms of your office and the funding for the Arts Council Northern Ireland, what you're doing to address the regional balance?
Well, I'm grateful to the member for raising this question, because it is a really important one. We must have regional balance when it comes to funding for the arts. Everyone deserves to have access to the arts, and this will be a central theme of the work that I am undertaking to develop a new arts policy, which I announced in July 24. That's a policy that's going to fill the long-standing vacuum, and it will be an important step forward in articulating and realising the benefits that the arts currently deliver, and the potential that we have to do more and to go further. It'll be based on several core principles and priorities which I set out in my written statement in July last year.
Clark.
Can I thank the Minister for that answer, and indeed the importance that you're placing onto that. And I'm sure you're like me, you'll be forgiven for believing that arts only seems to focus in a very small number of places. So what can you do to assure all of those other groups who do deserve equal funding and equal balance that this what you're introducing now will address that?
Mr. Speaker, I want to find new ways to support the arts, to maximise the contribution that it can make in terms of driving equality of access and opportunity across socio-economic groupings, age, geography and so on. I want to encourage greater participation, particularly from people and communities that might feel that the arts are not quite for them, or that their cultural or artistic activities and traditions don't quite fit. So I've written to the Chair and Chief Executive of the Arts Council with a letter of expectations. We can't maintain the status quo and simply hope for change. The arts should be enjoyed and experienced by every community equally in Northern Ireland, and that is not always the case. I recognise that some realignment of funding will need to accompany a realignment of priorities, and I also realise that this realignment will have implications for some existing plans and programmes. So it's for that reason that I thought it was reasonable to give the Arts Council timely notice in form of this letter of expectations. And in all of this work, I will continue to advocate for the arts and to make the case for more investment, but importantly, well-targeted investment as well.
Philip Rep.
Mr. Speaker, Minister, you will be aware of the religious discrimination case taken by an out-of-court settlement won by boxer Darrell Clark, indeed a constituent of yours. Minister, this is an issue that I have been raising since this issue took place. Does the Minister share my concern that 12 years after the Duncan Morrow report into amateur boxing here in Northern Ireland, that sectarianism and discrimination against Protestants seems to continue?
First of all, Mr. Speaker, I hope that you will let me put on record my sympathy, and I'm sure those of the whole House, on the passing of John Cooney. My thoughts are with John's family, friends and all those in the boxing world who knew and loved him. It was a tragic event, and I do want to commend the medical team at the Ulster Hall and all of the staff at the Royal Victoria Hospital for their work. Can I thank Mr. Brett for the issue that he raised, and I noted with interest the recent case which was settled between Darrell Clark and the Ulster Boxing Council. And I put on record I do know Darrell in a personal capacity. I have heard his story. As part of the settlement agreement, the Ulster Boxing Council committed to an Equality Commission comprehensive review of the governance practices and procedures applicable to the Ulster Boxing Council to ensure that they are compliant with the Fair Employment and Treatment Northern Ireland Order 1998 and any relevant codes of practice. It's important that this work is carried out by the Equality Commission urgently, because no matter who you are or where you're from, You should be able to progress in your sport if you have the talent and the ability, and no one should feel as if they don't belong.
Mr. Speaker, and amateur boxing is vital in my constituency in North Belfast, but the clubs that I speak to on a daily basis, their confidence in the leadership of these organisations is completely shot. Once again, we have a religious discrimination case against a Protestant. What proactive steps will you take, Minister, to ensure that regardless of class or creed, that any young person here in Northern Ireland has access to the exact same opportunities?
I completely agree with the member, and following a meeting with Sport NI and officials from sports branch within my department, I have made clear the urgent need to progress this work and make sure that recommendations from the report are implemented. But I am also considering what implications this may have to current and future funding arrangements. Sporting bodies should only be receiving taxpayers' money if they meet their equality obligations.
Nick Matheson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister outline what support his department provides to housing associations in Northern Ireland to deal with the impacts of paramilitarism in their housing schemes?
Minister.
Well, the member will know this is an issue we've been working on lately. In terms of, I don't know whether it's financial support the member is referring to, I can certainly provide that information, because through the Housing Executive and Housing Associations there are a number of programmes in place to deal with that, but I can get him the specific information that I just don't have on hand right now.
Mr. Matheson.
I thank the Minister for his answer. The Minister will be aware of certain housing schemes where the influence of paramilitarism is really significant, such as Weaver's Grange in Newtonards, where Clonmill have been dealing with long ongoing issues in managing the influence there. Can the Minister provide an assessment of the level of data sharing that is available for housing associations with the PSNI to help them effectively tackle the impacts of paramilitarism and paramilitary influence in their housing schemes?
Mr. Speaker, I would certainly hope that any information that is required will be passed on, and if it's not, I will always make sure that that is the case. But let me make one thing very clear. There should be no role whatsoever for paramilitaries in any issue to do with housing, and if that is the case, that should absolutely come to an end. Whenever housing is being talked about, when it's being discussed, when it's being allocated, that should be on the basis of need and in accordance with the housing selection scheme.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer so far. Can I ask the Minister what the cost to his department is of temporary accommodation over the last 5 years?
Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, in each of the last 5 years, the total non-COVID expenditure on temporary accommodation is as follows. 12.6 million, 13.7 million, 14.8 million, 26.4 million, 33.2 million, and provisional for 24-25, 35.4 million.
Mr. Brooks. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Minister, those are concerning figures to anyone that hears them in a time of budgetary constraint and housing crisis in Northern Ireland. Can I ask what measures you're taking to counteract that?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are living in unprecedented times when it comes to housing stress, and this means that we must do things differently. The Housing Executive already has a task and finish working group who have started to curb the trend of temporary accommodation spend. However, we need to do much more, and for that reason I will be making a significant announcement in the coming weeks which will see us make more provision for temporary accommodation and significantly reduce the long-term cost.
Minister, could I ask you to give us an update on the work to ensure the safety of disabled residents of high-rise towers following the Grenfell inquiry report?
Mr. Speaker, this is an area of concern, and he'll be aware of the work that has already been carried out by my department, both in terms of safety overall with regards to high-rise buildings, but specifically with regards to making sure that there is access for those with a disability. If there are particular issues that he would like me to address, I'm happy to do that.
Mr. Gilrenew.
Well, just to say I welcome the moving today of the sign language bill, but what is your engagement around a range of disabilities to ensure that it's safe for everyone?
Well, obviously that's what we want to make sure that we have a clear plan for, and that's why I'll be bringing forward a wider disability strategy which will ensure that we have the support in place to make sure that the public sector and others know that the actions that are required of them to make sure that we have the full inclusion and safety of those in our society with a disability.
Peter McGrath.
Minister, will you confirm if the funding provided to housing associations to build new homes will include the amount required to meet developer contribution costs?
Mr. Speaker, that is currently under review, and look forward to making a further announcement on that soon.
Thank you, Minister. On that basis then, Minister, have you potentially encouraged the Department for Infrastructure to update Northern Ireland Water's priorities to include house building in order to meet the growing number of people living in homelessness across Northern Ireland?
Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that I have raised frequently with the now former Minister for Infrastructure, both around the executive table and also in correspondence and in meetings with him. If we are serious about house building in Northern Ireland, if we are serious about making sure that we have the homes that people need, then we need to address the wastewater infrastructure issues. That means that we need to look at alternative solutions, because simply doing what we have always done is not going to cut it, and it's not going to build the homes that we need.
If members would take their ease whilst we change the chair.
Now question time for the Minister for the Economy, and I call Steve Aiken.